We have decided to do our presentation on Rue Bennet, a 17-year-old adolescent girl diagnosed with substance use disorder, primarily opioid dependence, along with generalized anxiety disorder and possible symptoms of depression and trauma. Rue shows impaired mental functions, including emotional dysregulation, memory problems, and poor executive functioning. She struggles to manage daily tasks like completing schoolwork and maintaining consistent routines. Her decision making is often risky, especially when driven by drug seeking behavior. In terms of social interaction, Rue has difficulty expressing emotions appropriately and maintaining healthy relationships. She often avoids conflict or uses manipulative communication to conceal her substance use. Performance patterns show maladaptive habits like lying, avoiding responsibility. Her roles as a student, daughter, and friend are disrupted, and her days lack structure. Emotional rituals tied to drug use further impact her occupational balance. She is still grieving the loss of her father, which triggered much of her emotional behavior decline. Socially, she lives with her overwhelmed mother, Leslie, and her younger sister, Gia, who is emotionally affected by Rue's instability. Family dynamics involve love, hope, but also conflict, codependency, and emotional exhaustion. Environmentally, Rue is often exposed to her peers and settings that normalize substance use. Culturally, the stigma around addiction impacts her identity and her willingness to seek help. The occupational therapist's approach with Rue must be trauma informed and client centered. Key innovations would involve rebuilding executive function, maintaining meaningful outcomes and routines, promoting emotional regulation.
So my portion I'm going to be presenting on is cultural influences of Rue's life and the impact of her occupational performance. Intersecting cultural, social, racial, and economic factors have a significant impact on Rue's life. So occupational dysfunction is influenced by these factors, especially when it comes to self-care, education, health management, and social interaction. Her experience serves as a reminder of the value of culturally sensitive, trauma-informed care when assisting clients with complex psychosocial settings and dual diagnosis. So as throughout the series, she experienced cultural influences, impact on occupational performance, issues with social participation, impact on her rest, her sleep, in her activities of daily life, in her roles as a student, in her roles as a sister or daughter, things of that sort. So for her family dynamics and ethnic identity, Rue's mother is white and her father is African American, making her multiracial, or biracial. So her ability to negotiate social, systematic, and personal expectations is influenced by her race. And also the death of her father from cancer profoundly influenced her emotional stability and her way of participating socially and actively with activities around school and with her peers. And also is a catalyst for her substance abuse as well. And also, so mental health stigma. Rue is diagnosed with several mental health disorders like bipolar disorder, anxiety, depression. And so her struggle reflects societal and familial challenges around accessing and accepting mental health care. And also substance abuse. She has experienced peer pressure, media influence, social norms, all lead to dangerous behaviors that jeopardize her well-being. Socioeconomic environment as well. Rue's family seems to be middle class, but is under a lot of stress, a lot of economic stress, social background stress, and things of that sort, which makes it difficult for her to get long-term care, establish stable routines, and engage in constructive hobbies. And so the impact on occupational performance, her education and work. She was intelligent. She was a very bright girl, but however, she struggled with her attendance, her motivation, and concentration throughout school, limiting engagement in activity or productive role beyond her tunnel focus of just being able to survive and cope with what she's dealing with in front of her. In her activities of daily living, she showed poor medication management and inconsistency with her treatment plans, which also enraged in her further acting out and things of that sort, as well as trying to make sure she is well taken care of and also looking after her sister and her family as well. So that kind of took a toll on her. In her ability to form and maintain healthy relationships, is impaired as well by emotional instability and mistrust. In her connection with Jules, her friend is both an occupation and source of regulation, yet it's also codependent, at times emotionally violent.
Okay, I'm going to get into the analysis, the application of the two occupation-based models that we selected for our presentation, which is the model of human occupation, or MOHO, and the person-environment occupation, also known as PEO. This will help us to analyze and understand her occupational challenges. So, of course, I want to break down the model of human occupation just to give a little background context. We know that it was developed by Gary Kiel-Hofner. It emphasizes that dynamic interaction between motivation, habits, and roles, that performance capacity, and our environment, all of those things, how they shape our occupational behavior. Again, the major assumption is that we as humans are intrinsically motivated to engage in our different occupations. Our habits, personal values, and emotional or cognitive abilities interact with these external factors such as the environment, routines, and expectations. So a change in one area, such as our motivation, can directly influence the others. Applying MOHO to RUE looks like breaking it down into the volition, habituation, performance capacity, and environment. For her volition, you can see that RUE's motivation is shaped by a need to escape her emotional pain, which is often through the medium of substance use. An occupational therapist would then work with her to reconnect to those meaningful and healthy occupations like music or art. Habituation focuses more on how her routines are chaotic and maladaptive, so the occupational therapist would also help to rebuild those consistent productive habits and roles. Performance capacity would focus on how her mental health has impacted her memory, attention, and executive functioning. So that, of course, will in turn limit her occupational performance, and that's another thing that the occupational therapist would target, as well as her environment, concerning her home life, her school setting, and her peer group, in order to incorporate and see how things can be changed to facilitate more of a supportive context for our character. So with that being said, MOHO fits RUE very well because it captures that interplay between her internal struggles, like the motivation and role confusion, as well as her environmental factors that contribute to her challenges as well. So I briefly mentioned the person-environment occupation model, the PEO model. Again, this was developed by Mary Law and colleagues back in 1996. This model examines how there's a fit between a person, their environment, and their occupations, and how that influences their performance over time. So this model assumes that optimal performance happens when an individual's abilities matches the demands of their occupations and environments. So dysfunction would happen when there's a mismatch between the three, but changing one component can improve performance. Again, that's referencing the transactional relationship that we know correlates with the PEO model. So to give a breakdown, person would focus on building RUE strengths. The occupational therapist would focus on building her creativity, her emotional depth, while addressing those challenges that she's expressed, such as the impulsivity and addiction. For environment, modifying her home, school, and social environment to reduce those triggers and to increase more predictability can also help to facilitate improvement in RUE's occupational performance as well. And then going into occupation, adapting her daily tasks and routines can help to also promote structure and support and more opportunities for success, which is key. So again, the PEO model highlights how RUE's chaotic environment, parental absence, and exposure to the drug culture has interacted with her vulnerabilities and created that lack of meaningful occupation. Now that we have some background context, I definitely want to get into the comparison, juxtaposing both models, as well as giving the rationale behind why we selected the model that we did in regards to approaching RUE's situation or case. Again, both models are valuable, but for RUE, we think that MOHO would be the stronger fit. Again, while PEO is capturing those environmental barriers and the need for the better person environmental fit, MOHO gives a deeper look into RUE's inner world. This is personal or pointedly addressing her volition, her disrupted habits, and performance capacity. So because RUE's primary challenges are stemming from those internal factors like the fluctuation in motivation, role confusion, and the effects of her substance use, MOHO better guides an intervention that would rebuild RUE's meaningful routines and support the personal growth that she needs at that time. So in conclusion, using those occupation-based models such as MOHO and PEO would allow us as future occupational therapists to see RUE as not just a character with an addiction, but as a person whose environment, habits, and motivations intertwine. So through these lenses, we can see or envision interventions that would empower her and many other individuals just like her to re-engage in life with purpose.
Hello, everyone. Let's begin by exploring function and dysfunction through the lens of the model of human occupation. According to MOHO, function is defined as the presence of integrated volition system, stable routines and roles, and competent performance capacity, and an environment that enables meaningful engagement in occupation. In RUE's case, we can see a few areas of strength that suggest some degree of functional capacity: self-awareness and emotional insight. RUE often demonstrates reflection through her narration and journaling, which indicates a strong internal voice and a potential avenue for therapeutic engagement. Regarding intellectual potential, despite her struggles, Rue is articulate, perceptive, and shows cognitive strength when not under the influence, which reflects underlying performance capacity that could be nurtured. Now, the dysfunction of MOHO. On the other hand, dysfunction in MOHO arises from the disrupted volition, impaired routines, and poor performance capacity, as well as environmental limitations. Rue exemplifies all of these. Regarding disrupted volition, she lacks motivation for recovery and often expresses a sense of hopelessness or sees herself as beyond help. Regarding poor habituation, Rue has no consistent roles or productive routines. Her life is largely dedicated by drug use. Impaired performance capacity. Her substance dependence, along with co-occurring depression, significantly affects her emotional regulation, physical energy, as well as cognitive performance. So how does change occur during MOHO? MOHO persists that change is possible when an individual is engaged in meaningful activities that align with their values as well as their self-perception. Recovery is supported by rebuilding volition, restructuring routines, and enhancing performance capacity. For Rue, two potential motivators stand out. Her sister Gia, because their relationship was one of the few constants in Rue's life. Family connections like this can serve as a powerful motivator and protective factor in recovery. Next is her narrative and creative expression. Rue possesses her world through storytelling and introspection, incorporating expressive occupations like journaling, music, or art that can be therapeutic tools that foster volition change and can help rebuild a coherent sense of identity within herself. Next, we're going to discuss how occupational therapists might evaluate Rue through MOHO. MOHO's evaluation focuses on 4 core subsystems. That is volition, habituation, performance capacity, and environmental influences. 2 key evaluation questions an OT might ask when working with Rue are, what meaningful routines or roles does Rue want to reestablish or develop? Another one might be, how does Rue perceive her own capacity to cope with daily life or make changes in her routine? These 2 questions can help uncover Rue's motivations and identify barriers to occupational engagement. MOHO emphasizes interventions that are personalized, occupation-based, and aimed at supporting volition and participation. Some key intervention guidelines include restoring meaningful routines and roles to give Rue a sense of structure and purpose. This role that she has is being a student or a sister. Another one is foster volition. By involving Rue in collaborative goal settings, this builds her sense of agency and internal motivation. Then we have develop performance skills, like emotional regulation, task initiation, and time management through activity-based therapy. Rue may also we can modify her environment. This will help reduce access to substances and promote positive influences such as peer support or sober housing. An effective intervention strategy for Rue could be occupation-based identity exploration. By utilizing this reflective journaling or visual storytelling, Rue can begin to reconstruct a sense of self that isn't tied to addiction. And this will support her volition change and promote a positive occupational identity. In the summary, the MOHO model helps us understand Rue as a complex individual with both strengths and challenges. By focusing on her volition, performance, and environment, occupational therapy can support Rue in regaining a meaningful life, rebuilding her identity, and moving toward recovery. Thank you.